What's up, Mets fans? Welcome to some breaking news here on the channel as the New York Mets get their ace, Freddy Peralta from the Milwaukee Brewers, and the young arm of Tobias Myers, as well as the Mets do trade Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams in the deal. And this is, guys, what I report. Let me say I reported, but I put a video out there few hours earlier in the day around 2:30 about this specific trade, except Tobias Myers was in the trade. This is back-to-back days now with Luis Robert Jr., where we know Mark Vientos was not going to be traded for Luis Robert Jr., and David Stearns wasn't going to let that happen, but added Luis Acuna and Paulie, the minor leaguer. And here, he was able to get another pitcher added in this deal in Tobias Myers, who is a very good young arm. And he's only, I think, how old is he? He is 26 years old. He had a 3.73 ERA in 22 starts. This is a middle of the rotation arm, along with getting the ace, and you gave up Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams, number 3 and number 5 prospect. Hell yeah. And yes, Myers is a swing arm. He's the guy that can jump into the bullpen. This is the guy that can be jumped right into the rotation. I'm going to go on. The Mets are going to get rid of either David Peterson or Kodai Senga. I feel that from now on, right now, because it only makes sense at this point when you're talking about what the rotation is going to look like. But right now, guys, the Mets got their ace. And I know people were saying in the comments, oh, but look what he did against the Dodgers in the NLCS. Well, you know what? He helped the Brewers get to the NLCS, right? You got to get, right? The Mets didn't make the playoffs last year. Freddy Peralta can make that happen, along with Nolan McLean. And this is what we missed last year, guys. We needed the guy that's a top-line starter, and we got the top-line starter. This is where the Mets need to be. We're looking, and they got their guy. And you know what? I'm going to say it, guys. Listen up. At 10:01 at night on a Wednesday, David Stearns, you get a ton of credit. That's right, folks. Breaking news. I'm giving David Stearns a ton of credit. I said it over and over again. Until you make that big free agent sign-in, until you make a blockbuster trade that is worth trading prospects, and he did it in back-to-back days. He traded Luis Acuna, who was not really rated anymore as a prospect, but he still was a top prospect. And then you trade your number 3 and your number 5 for Freddy Peralta and Tobias Myers. So you get stronger in your rotation if you're going to use Tobias Myers in the rotation, which I think they are. But I do think something else is coming down the line here, where I think either Kodai Senga or David Peterson is getting traded. We heard rumors about David Peterson being on the block and Kodai Senga being on the block earlier in the offseason. But this is what I wanted. I already said it. You get Freddy Peralta. Now, again, Bellinger didn't work out. It is what it is. But we got Luis Robert Jr. I think it's a good addition. I think Luis Acuna was expendable on this team. And guess what? David Stearns was able to take the deal that I put in the video earlier today with Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams for just Freddy Peralta and added a controllable arm that is young, that has tremendous potential. He had a 3.73 ERA, LC. He would have been, the second best pitcher on the Mets last year in Tobias Harris. So the Mets get their ace. You pair him up with Nolan McLean. You got Tobias Myers that is definitely going to be, I think he's going to definitely be in the middle of this rotation. Got tremendous stuff. We saw him in game 3, if I'm not mistaken, of the wild card series against the Mets. This kid has an electrical arm. He is a good pitcher, but the Mets did everything within 2 weeks? In big moves, Bo Bichette, Luis Robert Jr. Now we get Freddy Peralta and Tobias Myers. Let's go. This is awesome. And Dolo, I agree with that grade, a B plus. Right? I think if he would have got Bellinger and then made this move, it would have probably been an A. But because Luis Robert Jr. is a question mark, no doubt about it. I mean, he can do exactly what he did in the last couple of seasons and bat 226 with 15 home runs, only play 110 games. And, it's not for a guy who's making $20 million, it's not a great deal. But right now, but even if he does hit, let's just put it in perspective as we talk about the Freddy Peralta breaking news to the New York Mets. Putting things in perspective here is that even if Luis Robert Jr. did what he did last year, right? 20 stolen bases, 50 something RBIs, 226 average, 14 home runs. Let's say he does that. Besides the money, because the money is the low risk, high reward part, right? The Mets are clearly not missing money. Freddy Peralta is not really making much money, and Tobias Myers is not making much money. I mean, combined, they're probably making $10 million this year. And I do think Freddy Peralta is going to get extended by the New York Mets. He's not a Boras client, which is important to realize as well. And the Mets were able to hold on to Jonah Tong out of this deal. So that's a great sign. And, you heard rumblings earlier today. That's why I did that video about Peralta, that the New York Mets, right away stopped the conversation about Jonah Tong. And when the Mets didn't want to pay that high price, it's like, okay, I understand maybe why you don't want to give up Sproat and Williams for just Freddy Peralta. And you're like, okay, I can understand that, but you need an ace. Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams can't stop you from getting the player because, again, guys, people are saying, oh, I'm not going to pay that high price for Freddy Peralta as a rental. But you have to understand, you still got to beat other offers from other teams. We knew the Yankees were in on him. We know multiple teams were in it for Freddy Peralta. So it's not about what you just give up to the Brewers. It is what your offer is beating everybody else. That's what people just don't understand. People just think the Mets walk in there and say, hey, we'll give you this and this. Take it or leave it. Because what else are you going to do? That ain't the case. They had all the offers on the table. So the Mets have to beat that offer. And this is where I'm going to give David Stearns credit again. He was able to not only work with the two guys that was reported earlier about Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams, and great job by MLB Insider and Michael Marino for having this first. He didn't have Tobias Myers, but clearly that name popped up a little bit later in the day that this was going to be added to the Freddy Peralta trade. So this is exactly what I was hoping in my heart of heart that David Stearns would finally pull off. And he didn't hesitate. He hesitated, but he must have knew he was going to figure out this deal with Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams, right? Brandon Sproat is a guy, right? He's just lower than Jonah Tong, but let's be honest. Brandon Sproat showed a little bit more promise at the big league level than Jonah Tong. So the Brewers saw that. And yeah, they wanted Jonah Tong because Jonah Tong looks like he has the better upside. The Mets get their top pitcher and a middle rotation guy, and they still keep Jonah Tong. They still keep the majority of their farm system together for the most part, right? We'll see what else comes down the pipeline. But I mean, they just got Luis Garcia today, the 39-year-old reliever who had like a 3.4 ERA, I think it was this year, he has a 97 miles an hour sinker. He got a lively arm. That is a good addition to the middle of the bullpen, which is good as well. But again, the reason why people were talking about Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams earlier today, that it was too much for just Freddy Peralta, is fine. I understand that argument. But you couldn't lose Freddy Peralta to another team because of Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams. And I said this earlier on the video again about this similar trade on that video. Brandon Sproat is not what we need him to be right now. Not his fault. It's just is what it is. And Jet Williams, once again, got jumped on the depth charts. Carson Benj is getting the opportunity in the outfield now in left field. He's going to get every opportunity to win that left field job. He passed Jet Williams. How many years have we heard about Jet Williams? Right? I'm not saying Jet Williams can't be a really good player or even a great player or even Brandon Sproat be a top pitcher. But the way the Mets were starting to slowly put their offseason together, they're trying to contend. Jet Williams isn't going to provide that help that we need to contend. Brandon Sproat possibly in the back end of the rotation or the middle of this rotation. But you know what? You're basically trading Brandon Sproat for Freddy Peralta and Jet Williams for Tobias Myers, right? That might seem like, and I guarantee you, MLB trade values is going to say the Mets overpaid. That's probably what it's going to say. But I care what we're getting back, and we're getting two starting pitchers. One's a top-line starter, one's a middle-of-the-rotation guy, and he's good, and he has so much more potential and control. So, yes, you're giving up another 3 and number 5 prospect, but you got Tobias Myers that is under control and a good young pitcher, and you got Freddy Peralta, who's a top-line starter at this moment. And there were some people in the comments on that video saying, oh, he's a 5-inning pitcher. Yes, right? A lot of pitchers are 5-inning pitchers. But if you specifically watch the Brewers, they take their starters out all the time. This isn't a decision that Freddy Peralta gets to stay in the game. The Brewers have a plan with their starting pitchers. They don't let them go deep into games. That is not because Freddy Peralta can't do it. It is because they don't allow their starters to go deep into games. They want them out in after 5 innings and use their bullpen. And it's been successful, right? He threw, 170 plus innings this year, Freddy Peralta? Find me how many pitchers did that for the New York Mets this year, right? He can go, if you look at later in the season, especially August and September when they were trying to get the best record, he was pitching 6 innings, 6 1/3. He was going deeper into games. He can do it. The Brewers' philosophy is to not let their starters go past 5 innings, maybe 5 1/3, occasionally 5 2/3, but they don't allow them to go to the 6th inning very rarely. And they continue to use their bullpen, right? It's a successful season model, but when it comes down to the playoffs and you don't throw a pitcher longer than 5 innings and then you want them to in the postseason, they probably can't do it. Dolo, Peralta's the number 1, all right? Can you find me a Mets starter that had a 2.7 ERA last year? Anywhere near that had 30 starts? Right? Our best pitcher was Clay Holmes. He had an over 3 ERA. So Peralta's an ace. If he's better than everybody else on in your rotation, he's your ace. Right? And let's say he is a strong number 2. The Mets didn't have that either. So it's an upgrade. Let's say Nolan McLean becomes a Jacob deGrom 2.0. Great. Dolo, look, would I love another ace? Fuck yeah, I would. I tell you that right now. Of course I would. But we got to be realistic. Go get Zach Gallen on a 1-year deal. Right? Tobias Myers is going to be in this rotation. He's got a really good arm. Again, he had a 3.42 ERA last year. 3.73 ERA. Sorry, I'm a liar. 3.55 ERA last year in 22 starts. Again, how many guys actually pitch better than the Mets on the Mets this year than Tobias Myers? Right? How many guys? A good amount. Right? Here we go. Let's see what else we got. So basically he pitched because he was in the minors in AAA. He had 22 starts in the majors. He had 50 innings pitched, which they were clearly taking him out early in games in 22 starts. But overall, between the minors and the Brewers, he threw about 110 innings. So, and that's the other thing, guys. We got a top line starter, and we're paying the guy $8 million. And you get a controllable arm in Tobias Myers at 26 years old, who had a 3.55 ERA with the games he pitched with the Brewers. He pitched sometime in the minors as well. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he was coming back from an injury. So that's another good thing, right? He comes back from injury, gets back in the role, and pitches well. He was part of the Brewers being the best record in baseball. So, again, people, I don't know, KTO, I don't think people are disagreeing with the trade, but people are saying he's not an ace. I'm sorry. He's an ace. He was an ace on the Brewers, and he is the ace of the Mets. He's better than Nolan McLean at this moment. So what do they consider an ace? The best pitcher in your rotation. So yes, he's an ace. He had a 2.70 ERA, guys. What do you want? You want somebody to have a 0 ERA in 30 starts? All right, some fantasy world. He was better than probably 95% of baseball last year. And you can talk about the innings all you want. He was pitching for the Brewers. Go look at their starters throughout the season. They constantly take their guys out before the sixth inning all the time, no matter if they got 75 pitchers, 90 pitches. If they look great, it does not matter. They take their pitchers out to go to their bullpen. Mike Lewis, thank you for saving that. That's even a bigger thing. He's in a closed stadium. Obviously, it's open from time to time, but most of the time it's closed. It's Milwaukee. He's pitching in a hitter's ballpark, and he had a 2.70 ERA. And Music Man, thank you for the shout out, but I didn't call this trade. It was reported by Michael Marino, who's going to get a ton of credit because he brought this deal first, minus Tobias Myers, but he was the one that brought names to the table. Michael Marino, MLB Insider. Follow him. He did a great job here. I was just doing a video based on his reporting, not my reporting. But it felt like this was gaining momentum because there was names being about. They talked about Jonah Tong, and now all of a sudden that got wiped away, and then they brought up new names. And it's like, oh, okay, so they're really talking here. And not even 7 hours later, the Mets land Freddy Peralta and Tobias Myers. Well, great day. Yes, absolutely. 100%. Myers is a wild card. But is he really? He pitched to a 3.55 ERA once he came back. And I do believe he was hurt. Let me just double check on that really quick. I do believe he got hurt. Let me see. Let me just make sure. Let's see. I just want to check something really quick. Let's see. All right, so here we go. Tobias Myers started the 2025 season with a left oblique strain. So he started the season. That means he came back. Okay, so here's a perfect example of looking at innings for pitchers like Tobias Myers. He was expected to come back late April. He missed the first month, but returned to pitch, though he was later optioned to AAA Nashville in May as the team managed its pitching staff with his performance after the injury. So he quite wasn't there yet after his injury. But when he came back, he pitched with a 3.55 ERA. So he didn't start the season. He basically was 2 months, 1 month out completely in April. They sent him to the minors because he struggled when he came back from the oblique strain, which makes sense. Some guys take longer to come back. They sent them to the minors, get them fixed up. There's no pressure about innings or anything like that at the minor league level. Get him ready. He came back and pitched another 22 games after he came back with a 3.55 ERA. Guys, why are we looking at this the wrong way with Tobias Myers? This guy would have been the second best, minus Nolan McLean, because he came up in August. He would have been the second best pitcher on the New York Mets last year. It was Clay Holmes and Tobias Myers. And obviously Clay Holmes came up in August, so we only had 8-9 starts. So I'm not even putting Nolan McLean in that category of the rotation for the entire season last year. Tobias Myers would have had the second best rotation ERA in this rotation last year before Nolan McLean. Now you add Tobias Myers in this rotation with Freddy Peralta, with Nolan McLean. Let's just say, and I do think, once again, guys, thank you for tuning into the breaking news here as the Mets do trade for top starter Freddy Peralta and middle rotation arm Tobias Myers, the young 26-year-old with a 3.55 ERA last year for the Milwaukee Brewers. So, again, earlier today, Michael Marino, MLB Insider, give him a ton of credit. He had this first, said that Jonah Tong, Brandon Sproat, and Jet Williams were being discussed in a trade for Freddy Peralta. He didn't hear about Tobias Myers, but he also reported that the Mets said no way to Jonah Tong, and that's when Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams' names came up as a potential package for Freddy Peralta. And in that same article, he said it feels like it's too much to pay for Freddy Peralta as a rental for Sproat and Williams. And David Stearns was able to get Tobias Myers in the deal, which makes this deal tremendous. I know for a fact, because people were commenting on this video, they would not make that trade with Sproat and Williams just for Peralta. I wonder how some of them feel now with Tobias Myers added to this trade. Not many people are complaining about it. He's making $8 million, chump change. Steve Cohen uses $8 million to wipe his mouth as a napkin. This is starting to be a gradable Stearns offseason where it's going to start with a B. Because I think if he would have got Cody Bellinger and Freddy Peralta and Tobias Myers, it's already an A. So again, I know everybody says, oh, you're going to give David Stearns credit. I did to start the show. And I'm going to say it again. I waited for David Stearns to make a big sign-in, which he did, Bo Bichette. He was well in on Tucker. And they tried on Cody Bellinger. But they did land Bo Bichette. They traded for Luisano Acuna. And the next day, they get Freddy Peralta and Tobias Myers for Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams. Guys, finally, I was never given credit until he did it. Excuse me. He did it. Great job by David Stearns, because not only did he get Freddy Peralta, he was able to get the Brewers to say, give me Tobias Myers. I'm giving up your number 3 and your number 5. More than the Orioles gave up for Corbin Burns a couple of years ago. Who Burns was the better pitcher than Freddy Peralta. So the Orioles gave up their 7th and 10th ranked prospect for Burns, and the Mets were given more than what they gave up for Burns, or the Orioles, and they wanted more. And David Stearns, probably because he knows that organization, he was able to not even add to his package, but able to get the Brewers to add to their package with Freddy Peralta, and we get Tobias Myers. This makes the trade 100% perfect, in my opinion. And Dolo, yes, I put that video out there earlier. The Brewers asked for Tong, which, again, they wouldn't be doing their jobs if they didn't ask for Tong. But Stearns stopped that right in their tracks, saying Jonah Tong is not going to be in this deal. Not going to be in this deal. So that's it. But in that same negotiation, they still started to talk names. And the names that we heard was Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams for Freddy Peralta. So, David Stearns didn't walk out the room, or the Brewers didn't walk out the room and said, screw it. They figured it out. David Stearns didn't budge on extra prospects or different names. He said, okay, Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams, we can have that conversation, but I need more than just Freddy Peralta. I don't know how he did it. I don't know what he said to the Brewers. And this is by no means a fleece by anybody. Honestly, in my opinion, it's a pretty fair deal, right? The Brewers are trying to get controllable players. They got a starting pitcher. They got a top prospect that can play outfield or infield, which I wouldn't be shocked if both of them are on the Brewers roster on opening day. This is what they do. This is what they do. And they're probably happy with their return, and the Mets are clearly happy with that return. You don't get a lot of these fair deals where everybody's talking and like, they might have got fleeced. I don't think anybody got fleeced here. I think this is a very fair deal. It was a very competitive deal, but it needed to be competitive when he had the Yankees specifically in on Freddy Peralta. You have the Dodgers in on Freddy Peralta. So David Stearns didn't only have to entice the Brewers to take that offer. He had to have the best offer available compared to the other teams, or he wouldn't be a New York Met today. And we get Tobias Harris on top of that. I love it. I love it. I love it. And Greg, the Brewers don't retool, right? It looks like they're retooling, but yet they kind of retooled last year. They lost Willie Adames, right? They didn't have no Corbin Burns, and they still had the best record in baseball. So they know what they're doing, right? You know what? Listen, at this point, it doesn't matter if Brandon Sproat becomes Jacob deGrom or Jet Williams becomes the next Derek Jeter. Doesn't matter. What matters is, does Freddy Peralta be that top line starter that he has been? Does Tobias Myers look like the pitcher that he was when he came back in 2025? He also pitched in game 3 of the wild card against the Mets. And we all know how that game went, right? Nobody could hit anybody. But this is when the Mets are starting to put a roster together that is worth talking about, right? Just go back a month ago. Go back 3 weeks ago. Wasn't looking good for the New York Mets. Now, there was a lot of free agents out there, still guys on the trade market. It wasn't looking good, right? Met fans weren't happy, right? Luke Weaver and Devin Williams wasn't going to make anybody buy jerseys or buy tickets. But Bo Bichette might. Luis Robert Jr., probably not. But it shows a willingness to trade prospects. And that was always my concern. Now that the Mets have traded 3 top prospects for guys who are going to be in this rotation and in your lineup, it's time for David Stearns, for whatever we need at the deadline, depending on where the Mets are. And by no means do I think the Mets are a 75-win team anymore. All right? With the addition of Bo Bichette, with the addition of Luis Robert Jr., and Luis Garcia and Devin Williams and Luke Weaver, they're looking more like a high 80s team, especially with Freddy Peralta and Tobias Myers. The lineup has been extended. The rotation clearly has gotten better. And it's time for David Stearns to do whatever is necessary at the trade deadline. If the Mets are in a position where they're in a good spot playoff-wise, if you need a starting pitcher, if you need a big bullpen arm, if you need another bat, whatever you might need at the deadline, nothing should stop David Stearns from getting what they need. He finally showed a willingness to trade top prospects that he probably had to get uncomfortable to trade. And that was Luis Acuna. That is Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams. As I said for what, 2 years now, David Stearns needs to get uncomfortable with a trade. And I guarantee he was uncomfortable talking about Sproat and Williams. But sometimes you got to bite the bullet and make a move. Excuse me. Excuse me. So he did it. And we'll see if they're looking to do more in the pitching department. Excuse me. If they're trying to get I would say a middle of the road pitcher again, even though, again, Tobias Myers is a middle of the road pitcher. He is a guy that can fit right in this middle of the rotation. I think the Mets are going to trade either David Peterson or Kodai Senga. I mean, they don't have to, but hey, we'll see. All right. I wouldn't say Mets ruining baseball, but I get the joke. But you know what? Look, on January 21st, it took a little bit of time for David Stearns to wake up, but he's done a hell of a job. You know, they were in on the top 3 free agents in Bichette, Tucker, Bellinger, and they got one of them. They were in on one of the top trade market or trade pitchers on the trade market. They got him. Luis Robert Jr. has been rumored to be a Met for 3 years. 2 years at least. And they finally got him. Now, I'm glad Dwayne brought this up. You know, are the Mets still in on Framber Valdez? If they can get him on a short-term deal, I don't see why they wouldn't. They're not afraid to go 3 years on the deal. They're not afraid to go a short-term deal, high AAV. So if Framber Valdez is willing to take a 3-year deal with high annual value, great. Even better. Now we got a 1, 2, 3 that, you know what, is damn good. And oh, by the way, we do have Clay Holmes who showed potential. We do have Tobias Myers, who we just got in his deal. We still got Peterson. We still got Senga. We still got Sean Manaea. And now the Mets have options. What do? Manaea is not tradable. Peterson is, because I actually thought the Mets were trying to probably put Peterson in this deal with either Jet Williams or Brandon Sproat, but the Brewers probably weren't going to do that. But I don't know if the Mets are out on Framber Valdez. Because, again, if it's a short-term deal, Stearns have been showing a willingness to do it, even if it is 3 years for Framber Valdez. We'll find out. I think it's starting to get heating up here because Freddy Peralta is off the board. Now, what you get nervous about, or I mean, not really nervous, but at this point, what teams lost out that is willing to spend money to land Framber Valdez now if they were in on Freddy Peralta? Right? Was it the Yankees? I don't think the Yankees are going to spend more money on a pitcher, that much money on a pitcher. You know, what other teams? Is it the Dodgers? Is it somebody else? But the Mets shouldn't be out on Framber Valdez. Why? If he's willing to take a short-term deal, the Mets should be in on him. And you know what? That makes more of a reason to trade a Kodai Senga or a David Peterson. Because Valdez is better than everybody else other than Peralta and most likely the McLean. But right now, Freddy Peralta Framber Valdez would be a second-best pitcher until McLean shows he can pitch the way he did last year in 8 starts with 30 starts. That's when you establish a guy that's saying, okay, we see what he is. We know what he can do and what the potential is, but it isn't a finished book yet. It ain't a finished story yet with Nolan McLean. Because the way Met fans talk about him, like he can't take a step back. And that is kind of annoying because we know he's got great stuff. But every year, there's pitches that have great stuff that look like they're world beaters, and they never figure it out, and they never get better, and they never sustain success. I like that word when it comes to an actual player, not when you talk about the Mets. Nolan McLean still has a lot to prove. That's why Freddy Peralta is important, Because if Nolan McLean does take a little bit of a step back, your backup plan is Freddy Peralta. That's good. That was why we wanted it, not because of any other reason, except don't put all this pressure on this kid. Let the kid do what he does and do what he's done in 8 starts last year. Let him ease in where the pressure isn't all on him. And that's what I like. People in the comments saying that the Yankees are annoyed. We literally did nothing the whole offseason besides resigning people and getting Ryan Weathers. Well, the Yankees fan could be annoyed because you know what? That was what they were talking about. They were talking about getting Freddy Peralta. Oops, we have a better farm system. Sorry. The guys that the Brewers actually wanted, the Yankees actually need. So, too bad. You lose. Again. And Dolo, exactly, right? Making this trade gives more of a reason, especially with Tobias Myers. I'm thinking of basketball. Tobias Myers, Tom can take his time, develop it into the pitcher that not just Met fans or the Mets believe he can be, Major League Baseball. Because every time the Mets are in trade talks with a team, Jonah Tong's name comes up. And again, that doesn't mean he's going to be a great pitcher, but he clearly has potential and everybody notices. So this is a guy that now can develop in the minor leagues. If the first couple of months he's just mowing everybody down and the second half comes about and he's ready, great. That's a great addition to the rotation. And that is what you're supposed to do. Not rush these guys because you were incompetent at the trade deadline. Make no mistake about it. As much as David Stearns gets credit for this offseason, and I'm giving him a ton of credit because the things that I wanted him to do, he finally did. But last trade deadline, he fucked up big time. Him not doing what he was supposed to do at the deadline, bringing in a starting pitcher, allowed, yes, Nolan McLean to come up and show a lot of promise. But he put up Brandon Sproat up too early, and he brought up Jonah Tong too early, and it was obvious. And he allowed that to happen because he failed at the deadline. But, as I say many times, start the season with as less holes as possible. Hopefully none, but let's say very minimal holes on your roster. So when you get to the deadline, obviously injuries play a factor and all that, but let's just say everybody's healthy. But there's still something missing on the roster. A big bullpen arm, another bat, another starting pitcher. You're able to do it at the trade deadline because now this tells me he is willing to trade top prospects when we need a player. That is what David Stearns has lacked. And I don't count the bullpen arms last year because I thought they were good moves. Even though we traded 12 minor leaguers for 3 relievers. Little odd way to do it, but he did it. I thought they were good moves at the time, so I'm not going to kill Stearns for that. But yes, bullpen was important. But I think he could have got 2 of those bullpen arms instead of getting 3 and use more of those assets to obtain a starting pitcher. And everybody be like, oh, well, nobody worth getting was traded. Yeah. Well, that doesn't mean the Mets couldn't try and be more aggressive than everybody else. Just like they were aggressive right now with Freddy Peralta and Tobias Myers. So, and Adam, I'm glad you brought up Tariq Skubal because look what the Mets gave up for Freddy Peralta and Tobias Myers, right? Brandon Sproat, number 3 prospect, or Joe Williams, number 3 prospect, Brandon Sproat, number 5 prospect. Tariq Skubal is going to cost twice that. You're probably adding, I mean, you might have to add Jonah Tong in there, or even a Carson Benj. So, listen, the Mets can go out next year, or if there's baseball next year, and sign Tariq Skubal. You always worry if Tariq Skubal gets traded somewhere and he likes it so much he's willing to sign an extension, then that sucks. But Stinger, I agree. Go get Valdez at this point. If you can get him on a short-term deal, the Mets are in on him, right? Bo Bichette didn't stop the Mets from offering a short-term high AAV deal to Cody Bellinger, and they did what they had to do to try to get him, but they were just going high AAV short-term deal. If Framber Valdez is willing to take a short-term high AAV deal, go get him. Now you're talking about Peralta, McLean, Valdez as your 1, 2, 3. You got two guys that pitched a tremendous amount of innings last year. 170 plus for Peralta, 190 plus for Framber Valdez. And you throw in Nolan McLean there. And here's the other thing that would do. It wouldn't put pressure on Nolan McLean and Carlos Mendoza to push the innings of Nolan McLean early in the season when you got Freddy Peralta and Framber Valdez, who are workhorses, who throw innings. And again, everybody's like, oh, Peralta's a 5-inning pitcher. Again, that is the philosophy of the Milwaukee Brewers. They don't let their pitchers go deep. They throw 5 innings, 5 1/3, rarely 6 innings. They take them out for their bullpen. That is their philosophy. That is what they do. So don't look at the average innings for Freddy Peralta. All right? It's very much overrated what you're looking at there because of what they do with their pitching staff. They don't allow their pitchers to go deep into games. They just don't. And it's successful during the season, but what happens when you get to the playoffs and you need your top starters to go deeper into games, they can't do it because you don't allow them to do it all season. You don't just snap your finger and say, hey, Freddie, go 8 innings for us, when he might have done it once all season. And you continue to take him out regardless of his pitch count before the 6th inning. So don't look into the average innings he pitched, because that's the philosophy of the Milwaukee Brewers. Freddie Peralta can, and, again, he's on the Brewers, so it's very hard to look at Freddie Peralta's innings and just, you can make the argument for it, but it's just, what the Brewers do and how their philosophy is, they don't allow their starters to go deep into games. Like, let's just look. All right, let's see. And by the way, the last 3 years, 30 starts, 32 starts, and 33 starts. 3.86, 3.68, and last year, his best year of his career, 2.70. All right? So he's thrown 100, the last 3 seasons, 165, 173, 176. Right? He has over 200 strikeouts in every year in the last 3 years. His walks are only 66 last year, which is really good for 33 starts. Let's see what else we got here. Got strikeouts per 9 is over 10. Walks per 9 is over 3.5. Home runs per 9 is home runs per 9 is 1.1. Hits per 9 is 6.3. His whip is over 1, which is always great to see as a pitcher, as I'm not a big, guy. He gave up 21 home runs. Again, he's in a bandbox in Milwaukee. So what everybody also has to understand is Freddy Peralta was in a hitter's ballpark in Milwaukee. He probably pitched half his games in Milwaukee, and he had a 2.70 ERA. Now he's going to a pitcher-friendly ballpark where in April and late March into April and early May, you're pitching in bad weather at Citi Field, where the ball does not fly until like late May, maybe even June. So he's going to a pitcher's ballpark. He already shows he can pitch in a hitter's ballpark with his 2.70 ERA. And I'm going to be serious here, guys, and say, even if he doesn't pitch to his ERA last year, but give us a 3.1, 3.2, That's perfectly fine. Because he's probably going to give up more hits at Citi Field. It's a bigger ballpark. More balls drop in. Understandable. Where more guys in Milwaukee, especially in right and left, kind of play in a little bit more because of the way the field is. If he pitches anywhere between from what he did last year at 2.7 to say a 3.2, that's money. That is money. That is an ace. And again, define an ace. An ace is the best pitcher in your rotation. Freddy Peralta is that. And I'm sorry, a 2.70 ERA is an ace. That's it. Don't worry about what he did 2 years ago. Don't worry about what he did 3 years ago. What did he do last year? It wasn't even in his contract year, by the way. You're getting a guy who's also in a contract year. And I do believe the Mets are going to extend him. He's on a Boras client, so he can be extended. And he was willing to sign an extension with the Brewers, but we know the Brewers are crying poor, even though their owner is tremendously rich. So the best part about this is, guys, is that the New York Mets roster is coming into shape. They're starting to look like a contender more and more each day. Back-to-back days of big trades. Luis Robert Jr. for Luisano Acuna, and Freddy Peralta and Tobias Myers for Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams. It's coming together. Signing Bo Bichette. Signed Luis Garcia today, who is a 39-year-old but still has a lively arm, had a 3.4 ERA last year. Pitched for the Dodgers, Nationals, and Angels. Still a great arm. In the middle relief, that's perfect. We'll see if the Mets are looking for another bullpen arm, but you already got Garcia, Weaver, Williams, Raleigh. Possibility of Dylan Ross being on this in this bullpen. You got Yoasker Brazaban. You got AJ Minter. This bullpen is starting to look very nice. Again, on paper, it looks good. We need people to stay healthy here. The Mets aren't necessarily younger than they were last year, right? With Simeon and Polanco, older guys, but still guys that had, at least Polanco had a really good season. Simeon, yes, offense took a little bit of a plummet, but let's see if he gets rejuvenated by not being in a cavernous ballpark in Texas. Maybe it helps him a little bit more. We know he's got a great glove. Bo Bichette is a monster hitter, right? Yes, he's not a big power hitter, but he's a 20 home run guy, but he bats over 300. Wow. Imagine that, a Mets hitter batting over 300 with potential power. It's not a Jeff McNeil who hits 12 home runs and bats over 300, in his early years. Bo Bichette can hit you 20 home runs, maybe even a little bit more, and bat you 300. David Stearns is putting a lineup together with a bunch of guys that have bat-to-ball skills. That's Juan Soto, that is Bichette, that is Polanco, that is even Simeon for that matter. I know his average took a dip, but he puts the bat on the ball. He doesn't have a tremendous amount of strikeouts. A lot of these guys, Bo Bichette doesn't strike out a lot. Polanco doesn't strike out a lot. Soto, even though last year he did, but career-wise, he doesn't strike out a lot. You got a lot of guys who don't strike out a lot, put the bat on the ball, and you got Bichette, Simeon, Polanco, all guys that are clutch performers. Polanco did it last year in the playoffs. We saw Bo Bichette do it in the playoffs and the World Series. And Simeon's the same way. He's a clutch performer. His entire career, you got Juan Soto, who everybody knows he's clutch in the postseason. We have Lindor, who is Mr. Clutch in the postseason. So you got the top 5 or 6 in your lineup being clutch performers. Do they have tremendous amount of home run potential, all these guys? No. But what you do, you spread out those home runs between 1 through 6. And that's not including Beatty, who can be a utility guy. Let's say Mark Vientos is your DH. He can hit 20 home runs in his sleep, maybe more. if Francisco Alvarez even has a little bit of a bounce back, you're talking about a 20 home run guy. So you can have the entire lineup that has minimum 20 home runs at least for every one of their players in their lineup. And again, if Carson Benz plays left field, I'm not going to say he can hit 20 home runs, but who knows, right? That's a question mark. But you know what? Carson Benz is going to be batting 8th or 9th. I'm not too worried about that right now because your 1 through 7 looks a hell of a lot better than what it did last year because the Mets' problem offensively last year wasn't 1 through 4. It was 5 through 9. And Michael, you could say he's still not beating the Dodgers, but it's baseball. The Dodgers nearly lost the World Series by an inch. They won it. Give them credit. They made the plays necessary, but they didn't have the best record last year. They didn't have, they faced the Reds, the Brewers, which, let's be honest, those teams are not really threatening to anybody, even though the Brewers had their best record, right? But they did struggle against the Blue Jays. They weren't the better team in the World Series. They won. They still get credit for that. But everybody's beatable in baseball. As I said many times, the Major League Baseball playoffs is now like the NHL playoffs. Just get in and anybody can win. The Dodgers aren't invincible. I don't care who they get. It's baseball. You have 1 or 2 guys that have down seasons, that changes your ball club. And I'm not saying the Dodgers will have down seasons from guys, but in baseball, anybody can win. Anybody can win. So, once again, guys, with the breaking news here, as the Mets make a big trade, blockbuster trade for Freddy Peralta and Tobias Myers for Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams, their number 3 prospect and their number 5 prospect, going to the Brewers. New York Mets get their top line starter, and they also get a middle rotation arm in Tobias Myers. He can be a flex guy as well. He could go to the bullpen, but I don't see the Mets doing that. I think you throw him in the rotation. He can be your number 3, your number 4. The Mets could still be in on Framber Valdez, as they are still on Framber Valdez, according to the latest reports. Obviously, only on a short-term deal, but who cares at this point? The short-term deal, if Framber Valdez is willing to take it, great. It makes our rotation that much better. You get 190 innings. You get a guy who has a 3.5 ERA. Great. And I still think he can be better with a better rotation. With Freddy Peralta, Framber Valdez was like the guy in Houston. He doesn't have to be the guy. He can be a number 3. You can do a lot worse than Framber Valdez as your number 3. And what you hope during this revamp of a rotation, can Nolan McLean take that next step, that next level? Because if he gets to that next level and he gets better, you're talking about a top starter in Freddy Peralta, a top starter in Nolan McLean. Now you got 2 top starters at the top of your rotation. And I do think the New York Mets are still in on Framber Valdez for a short-term deal. That's going to be very interesting. It's going to be a lot of fun. And let me just check one thing about Tobias Myers. All right, so for Tobias Myers, guys, he is under control. He's 27 years old, going to be 27 this year. He's making pennies. He's making over a little under $800,000. He is pre-ARB eligible. The Mets got 3 years of control of Tobias Myers, 26, 27, and 28. So you're going to have him hopefully in his best years in his prime, 26, 27, 28, and 29. So Tobias Myers isn't a rental. He is under control. This is why this deal makes it look so much better. It's only 3 years of control. Actually, you might be right about no, hold on. Because it says here 3 years of control. So he's going to be a free agent. Oh, you know what? You might be right, guys, because they don't have exactly, but because he's only up to R in 2028. So, yes. So he does have 4 years of control. Thank you, Chris. I was reading that wrong for a second and for a second. Okay. Yes. So you got 4 years of control. It is after 2020. So he'll be a free agent at 2020, 2030, 2031, 2030. So there we go. The Mets get their top line starter. They bring in Tobias Harris, who is 26 years old, going to be 27. You got multiple years of control, 4 years of control for Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams. This is a tremendous deal. If Met fans are going to complain about this deal, look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, do you actually want to win? Because Jet Williams and Brandon Sproat should not make you lose sleep at night for what the Mets just got here. Some might say the Mets fleeced the Brewers, but I think it's a very fair deal. I think it's a very, very fair deal, in my opinion. Very fair deal. It's a good deal. It's 100%. It's a great deal for the Mets, but I think it's actually a really good deal for the Brewers, and it's a fair deal. Again, earlier today, once again, for people who are just tuning in, Michael Marino, MLB Insider, showed these names from the Mets' point of view of Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams for just Freddy Peralta. David Stearns didn't want to pay that high price for just Freddy Peralta. But they were very serious. They were still negotiating, still talking, which was a good sign. And then a few hours later, the negotiations heated up. And clearly, it was David Stearns trying to get somebody else in the deal. Now, I guarantee you he asked for Trevor McGill. But I think if the Mets would have got Trevor McGill and Peralta, it would have been a steal for the New York Mets. But the Brewers probably didn't want to do it because they probably can get a good amount for Trevor McGill at the trade deadline if they're not contenders. So, once again, guys, the deal that happened about an hour ago, Freddy Peralta and Tobias Myers going to the Mets for Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams. The Mets get their top line starter. They get a middle rotation arm who is young and controllable with 4 years of control, making pennies. And oh, by the way, Freddy Peralta is making pennies, $8 million. And we'll see if the Mets look to extend Freddy Peralta, which makes all the sense in the world at this point. I mean, if you extend Freddy Peralta, this deal's 100% a no-brainer. And anybody who complains about it is just a wacko and just nuts. Because there's going to be a guy, I love Jet Williams. Because I know he has so many places to play on this team. It's amazing, which he doesn't. He has no room to play. So, again, Jet Williams became expendable. I think Brandon Sproat would have loved to bring. I think Stearns would have loved to kept Brandon Sproat. But you can't not do this trade because of Brandon Sproat. He wasn't going to be a part of your rotation in 2025, 2026, at least in the beginning. You're able to keep Jonah Tong in this trade. Keep Jonah Tong out of this trade. You had to do it. And you also get Tobias Myers. So excellent negotiations by David Stearns, allowing the Brewers to remain focused on Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams, but did probably everything he can to get Tobias Myers. Because this deal, I'm telling you guys right now, this deal would not have gone down without either Trevor McGill or Tobias Myers in this deal. Because earlier today, Freddy Peralta for Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams, what was reported, and David Stearns said no. So he probably tried for McGill, which makes all the sense in the world to fill out that bullpen arm. And this is where I think Luis Garcia came in when the Mets signed him. I think while these negotiations were happening, and David Stearns realized the Brewers are not going to put McGill in this deal, Trevor McGill for that matter, they went to sign Luis Garcia as a middle reliever. And Tobias Myers was the guy who was included with Freddy Peralta. So one more time, guys, with this Mets breaking news as the Mets trade for Freddy Peralta and Tobias Myers for Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams. This is an A++ trade for the New York Mets. They pull off a blockbuster move where they not only get Freddy Peralta, but they beat out offers from other teams, the Yankees, the Dodgers, and others, to get this deal done. Tremendous thought by David Stearns. That's right, more breaking news. I'm giving credit to David Stearns. David Stearns has done a hell of a job. He did a great job at this trade. I love the trade for Luis Robert Jr. for an expendable Luis Acuna. Signed Bo Bichette a week ago. And the question is, what is he going to do next? Is Framber Valdez still on the table for the New York Mets? You think they would probably get maybe a veteran bench arm, or maybe not, veteran bench bat hitter? Maybe not. Maybe they just it seemed like the bench is kind of okay, right? We got Vientos, Mauricio, and Taylor. Probably need one more in there. Might get some type of veteran. You can always get another bullpen arm. That's a possibility as well. But the bigger question is Valdez still on the table for the New York Mets for a short-term deal? I say yes. I say let's do it. Make your rotation even better. David Stearns realized how bad this rotation was last year. And another one is because Tobias Myers is in this deal, does that mean the days are numbered for either David Peterson or Kodai Senga? You guys know which one I would choose to get rid of, and that's Kodai Senga. I think David Peterson on a contract year, I'd like to keep him because he can't have a big season in a contract year. Kodai Senga, you can send his ass to Japan for all I care. So with that said, the Mets get their top-line starter. I can possibly go to bed. That would be nice. And with that said, guys, have a great night. Smile, Met fans. This team is looking better and better by the day. Let's go, Mets. And I'll see you tomorrow. It is set up to be a Mets Talk Live, but I'm going to talk to Chris. Maybe we'll do a Mets Hot Stove. A lot happened the last time we did a Hot Stove a couple of days ago. So we'll probably get together on a Mets Hot Stove instead of a Mets Talk Live. But right now, the Mets Talk Live is ready to go. If you are on the stream right now, hang on. It's going to take you right to that Mets Talk Live stream. Make sure you hit that like button before you call it a night, guys. Have a great night, guys. The Mets get their top-line starter. Once again, Freddy Peralta, Tobias Myers, for Brandon Sproat, and Jet Williams, guys. Let's go, Mets. Have a great night, and I'll see you next time, guys. Good night.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the M-E-T-S Mets of New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go? To meet the Mets! Oh, they're hollering and cheering and they're jumping in their seats. Where do they go? To meet the Mets! All the fans are true to the orange and blue, so hurry up and come